What is right and what is wrong? Foreword. A call to true recognition of right and wrong in an age of confusion. Humanity today stands in a peculiar hour, an hour in which nearly everyone speaks of morality, yet few understand what it truly means. Concepts such as right and wrong are tossed about with confidence, yet when one looks deeply, he discovers that these words no longer rest upon firm ground. They have been twisted by culture, diluted by opinion, reshaped by emotion, and smothered beneath the ever-expanding fog of human intellectualism. Thus, at a time when clarity is most needed, confusion reigns. This book is born from the necessity of the hour. It seeks to restore to humankind the living understanding of right and wrong, not as humanity imagines them to be, but as they exist within the immutable structure of creation. For what is right is not determined by vote, tradition, personal preference, or religious decree. Nor is what is wrong made permissible simply because the world accepts it, praises it, or normalizes it. Right and wrong are woven into the very laws that govern existence. They are objective, living realities, entirely independent of human theorizing. Whether one acknowledges them or not, they shape destiny, form fate, and determine the course of every life. Yet man has forgotten this. He has replaced eternal truth with shifting standards, measuring morality by what feels comfortable, familiar, or socially rewarded. He has mistaken the approval of the many for the correctness of an act, and the disapproval of society for its wrongness. He has judged by emotion instead of recognition, by intellect instead of awakened intuition. The Grail Message brings illumination to this forgotten domain. It offers clarity where confusion has long prevailed. It restores the understanding that right and wrong are recognitions, not inventions, discoveries, not constructions, realities anchored in law, not fantasies of the human mind. This book does not attempt to create a new moral code. Instead, it aims to awaken the reader to the laws of creation, in which the true distinction between right and wrong already stands complete. Whoever learns to perceive these laws will walk securely. Whoever aligns with them will find peace, strength, and inner certainty. And whoever ignores them, through ignorance, stubbornness, or pride, must face the consequences of his deviation. May this work serve as a lamp in darkened times. May it guide the earnest seeker back to the path of uprightness. And may it help humanity once again understand what is right and what is wrong, not according to man, but according to truth. Introduction. The misunderstood concepts of right and wrong. Few things are spoken of as frequently, yet understood as poorly, as right and wrong. Children are taught them through reward and punishment. Adults defend them with heated arguments. Religions codify them in doctrines and traditions. Nations legislate them into laws. Cultures shape them according to collective preferences. And yet, with all this noise, humanity remains astonishingly uncertain of what right and wrong truly are. For some, right means whatever society approves. For others, right is whatever a religious authority declares. For another, right is simply what feels good or sincere. And there are those who believe nothing is objectively right or wrong, that morality is merely a matter of perspective. This chaos exists because man has turned away from the objective order woven into creation. He has lost the ability to recognize right and wrong through the inner voice of intuition, which alone can perceive truth. He has allowed the intellect, which is bound to earthly reasoning, to dominate spiritual decisions. And he has built entire systems of morality upon human preference instead of universal law. Thus, the world is filled with contradictions, confusion, and moral blindness. But right and wrong do not change. They are not fluid. They do not bend to convenience or cultural trends. They remain anchored in the eternal laws that govern life, movement, and development within creation. When man deviates from these laws, he commits what is wrong. When he aligns with them, he does what is right. Recognition of this is the foundation of true morality. This book seeks to restore this recognition. Why humanity needs spiritual clarification. Never in history has humanity been more outwardly advanced and inwardly lost. With the intellect sharpened and the spirit neglected, man no longer knows how to evaluate his own actions. He rushes forward in technical brilliance yet stumbles morally like a child. Confusion about right and wrong is not a philosophical inconvenience, it is a spiritual danger. Entire nations crumble when their moral foundations collapse. Families disintegrate when individuals cannot distinguish lawful action from harmful action. Inner turmoil arises when one repeatedly violates spiritual laws without understanding why life reacts as it does. Humanity needs clarification because emotional impulses masquerade as moral conviction. Social trends override spiritual recognition. Fear and guilt suppress honest questioning. Intellectual cleverness justifies wrongdoing. Tradition replaces living understanding. Religious authorities claim infallibility. Personal desires cloud discernment. Without luminous guidance, man cannot find his way. The Grail Message exposes the roots of these errors with clarity and compassion. It explains the natural consequences of moral deviation, not as punishment, but as the lawful reaction of spiritual laws that give every human being exactly what he has set in motion. This book is written to assist humanity in returning to the simple, objective, living understanding of right and wrong. The Grail Message is a guide to moral recognition. The Grail Message stands as a pure light in a world darkened by subjective morality. It does not impose commandments. It does not offer dogma. Instead, it unveils the structure of creation, whose laws themselves define what is right. It teaches that wrong actions are those that disturb the harmony of spiritual radiations. That right actions are those aligned with purity, justice, and natural order. That every human being can recognize the truth inwardly. That moral clarity is a natural ability of the awakened spirit. This understanding liberates the reader from fear, from blind obedience, and from the pressure of human opinion. It teaches him to stand independently in the light of truth, judging not according to personal benefit but according to law. The Grail Message restores the recognition that true morality arises from intuition, not intellect, from inner knowing, not external compulsion. It shows that right and wrong are not matters of belief but matters of law. The difference between human judgment and universal law. Human judgment is unreliable because it emerges from earthly limitations, personal history, cultural conditioning, emotional bias, and self-interest. Human beings justify, excuse, defend, distort, and reshape morality to fit their desires. Universal law, however, is free from all human weakness. It stands unchangeable, impartial, incorruptible. Human judgment asks, what benefits me? What feels acceptable? What do others approve? Universal law asks only, does this align with truth? With purity? With justice? With the natural order? Human judgment varies from place to place, century to century. Universal law remains the same in all times and all spheres. Only through aligning with universal law can man recognize what is truly right and what is truly wrong. This book aims to help the earnest reader perceive this lawfulness and apply it in everyday life. Part 1. The Nature of Right and Wrong. Understanding morality beyond human opinion. Humanity has spoken of right and wrong for millennia, yet few truly understand what these words signify on a spiritual level. People often define them according to culture, upbringing, emotion, or personal preference. But true right and true wrong do not arise from human opinion. They are anchored in the immutable laws woven into creation itself. In this part, light is cast on the essence of morality, not as religion has taught it, not as society imposes it, but as it exists in the living spiritual order. Here, the Grail Message offers clarity, freeing the individual from fear, confusion, and the tyranny of human-made rules. From this foundation, one can finally perceive that morality is not about pleasing people, following customs, or avoiding punishment. It is about aligning with the will of God expressed in His laws, which govern every movement, every thought, every consequence, and every outcome in creation. Chapter 1. What is right, and what is wrong? The spiritual, radiational origin of moral distinction. How law and order determine correctness in action. Humanity often believes that right and wrong are created by society, religion, or authority figures. But true morality predates every human institution. It flows from the structure of creation, which operates according to laws as precise as gravity. Right is anything that harmonizes with these laws. Wrong is anything that disrupts their natural course. This distinction is not emotional, not arbitrary, and not shaped by cultural interpretation. A deed is not right because the majority celebrates it. It is not wrong because a community disapproves of it. Every action carries its own radiational imprint, and this imprint either aligns with the lawful order of creation or opposes it. Right actions radiate purity, upliftment, clarity, and constructive movement. Wrong actions radiate distortion, heaviness, confusion, and destructive consequences. When a person lies, even in secret, something within tightens. When a person acts with kindness, sincerity, or courage, something within expands. These inner movements are not psychological tricks, they are spiritual reactions to radiations set into motion. Therefore, what is right is always lawful. What is wrong is always a violation of spiritual order. This is universal, timeless, and independent of human agreement. The Grail Message explains that the will of God is expressed entirely in the laws of creation. To act rightly is to move with the current of these laws. To act wrongly is to push against them, creating friction, suffering, and consequences that eventually return to the actor. Thus, the essence of morality is not obedience but recognition. Only through inner awakening does one begin to sense what aligns with truth and what opposes it. Chapter 2. Human Misconceptions about Good and Evil. Emotionalism, Habit, and Cultural Bias. The danger of mistaking personal preference for law. For centuries, humanity has built systems of morality upon shifting sands. Cultures define good differently. Emotions sway opinions. Traditions dictate conduct. Religious institutions impose rules that sometimes reflect divine law, but often reflect human fears or desires. Thus arose a world full of moral contradictions, where one society praises what another condemns, and individuals justify whatever favors their self-interest. There are three major causes of this confusion. 1. Emotionalism. Many people assume something is right because it feels pleasant or comforting, and wrong because it feels unpleasant or challenging. But feelings are often shaped by upbringing, bias, or self-protection, not by truth. People may hate correction yet desperately need it. People may love comfort yet be destroyed by it. Emotion cannot determine morality. 2. Habit. Repeated actions become familiar, and familiarity is often mistaken for correctness. A person may continue in falsehood simply because it has become normal. Habits are not standards for what is right. They are simply patterns, some helpful, some destructive. 3. Cultural and societal bias. Entire generations may celebrate values that are spiritually destructive. History is already filled with examples. Injustice once considered virtuous, oppression justified as order, or violence defended as duty. What a culture approves is not equal to what creation approves. The core danger: mistaking preference for law. Modern humans frequently elevate opinion above truth. I feel, I think, I prefer, or I want, have replaced objective recognition of spiritual laws. Thus, humanity has crafted a morality that is self-centered rather than God-centered. Only through a return to spiritual law can this confusion be dissolved and true recognition restored. Chapter 3. Consequences of Actions, the Harvest Principle. How actions sow seeds that shape inner and outer reality. Wrong acts as disturbances in radiational harmony. Every action, thought, word, and intention is a seed sown into the soil of creation. These seeds do not disappear. They mature according to the immutable law of reciprocal action. What a person sows, he must reap. Right actions sow seeds of harmony that return as blessing. Wrong actions sow seeds of disruption that return as suffering. Humans often misinterpret consequences as punishment. But consequences are not punishment, they are harvests. Each seed grows according to its nature. A seed of deceit returns confusion. A seed of envy returns inner torment. A seed of kindness returns warmth and upliftment. A seed of courage returns strength. Thus, wrong actions are not sins, in the cultural sense, they are violations of harmony. They create disturbances in the radiations that eventually rebound upon the originator. What appears as coincidence, fate, or misfortune is often simply the delayed harvest of long-forgotten seeds. Recognizing this principle dissolves fear and awakens responsibility. Morality becomes practical. No threat is needed. No external enforcement is required. The laws themselves respond automatically. One cannot escape the harvest. but one can change the seeds. Chapter 4. Recognition versus blind conformity. True morality arises from awareness, not imitation. How intuition aids in discerning lawfulness. Many people behave morally only because society expects it or religion demands it. Such morality is fragile, easily abandoned under pressure, and incapable of producing genuine inner transformation. Conformity is not righteousness. Imitation is not understanding. Obedience without recognition is hollow. True morality requires personal recognition, the awakening of one's inner perception of spiritual lawfulness. When the intuition is active, one does not obey blindly, one sees clearly. The human spirit possesses the natural ability to recognize right from wrong. But this ability becomes dormant when the intellect dominates or when cultural conditioning suppresses inner clarity. The Grail Message reminds humanity that intuition, pure, quiet, direct perception, is the voice of the spirit. It reveals what resonates with light and what carries a shadow. To awaken recognition, one must become still inwardly, examine motives honestly, listen beyond emotion, release fear of disapproval, allow the inner knowing to speak. When recognition awakens, moral decisions become simple, not always easy, but clear. One no longer follows the masses but follows the lawfulness inscribed within creation. In this way, the individual steps out of the fog of conformity and into the clarity of personal responsibility. Chapter 5. The Spirit's Role in Moral Orientation. How alignment with the higher self clarifies right and wrong. Why humans feel inner resistance to wrongful acts. Every human spirit carries within it a spark of the light, a guiding resonance that naturally inclines toward purity, justice, honesty, and uprightness. This inner spark constantly emits a quiet guidance. This is why a person often feels resistance when attempting to perform a wrongful act. It may appear as uneasiness, heaviness, restlessness, or a quiet inner voice urging caution. This is not psychology. It is the spirit reacting to disharmony. Wrong actions carry lower radiations that the spirit instinctively rejects. When a person persists nonetheless, due to desire, pressure, or habit, the spirit becomes increasingly obscured. Over time, the inner voice grows weaker, and recognition dulls. Right actions harmonize with the radiations of the spirit, strengthening clarity, peace, and inner freedom. Thus, morality is fundamentally a spiritual orientation. It is the spirit aligning itself with the laws that govern all existence. To live rightly, the human being must reconnect with the voice of the spirit, free itself from the domination of intellect, purify intentions, seek clarity rather than convenience, honor the quiet warnings within. When the spirit leads, right and wrong become unmistakable, not through fear of punishment, but through recognition of what fosters spiritual growth and what hinders it. In this awakening, the human being becomes capable of walking through life upright, free, and aligned with the will expressed in the laws of creation. Part 2. The Spiritual Foundations of Morality. Radiations, Laws, and the Inner Compass. Chapter 6. Radiations, the Invisible Measure of Right and Wrong. How vibrations and energies reveal alignment or deviation from law. Humanity has long attempted to define right and wrong through outward rules, societal norms, cultural traditions, and religious doctrines. Yet all these human frameworks shift with time and geography. What is acceptable in one society is condemned in another. What is legal in one era becomes forbidden in the next. Such instability proves that morality cannot be rooted in human invention. The Grail Message draws attention to a deeper foundation, the radiational structure of creation, in which every thought, every intention, and every action produces a vibration that aligns either with light or with darkness. Right and wrong, therefore, are not arbitrary. They are measurable realities within creation. Every action that harmonizes with the natural radiance of the laws carries brightness, uplift, and constructive power. Actions that violate these radiations carry heaviness, distortion, and destructive effects. Human beings often perceive this subconsciously. The heart grows heavy after wrongdoing, even when the intellect tries to justify it. Conversely, a right action brings inner clarity and a quiet peace, even when it is difficult. Radiations do not lie. They reflect the truth of a deed long before consequences unfold physically. Thus, morality is not a human invention, it is a spiritual exactness woven into the very fabric of existence. To understand right and wrong, one must first understand radiational harmony, for in this lies the true measure of correctness. Chapter 7. The Law of Reciprocal Action and Moral Balance. Cause and effect in spiritual and earthly contexts. The law of reciprocal action, often simplified as, what a person sows, they shall also reap, is one of the greatest clarifiers of moral truth. It stands independent of belief, culture, religion, or ignorance. Every human act releases a seed into creation, and this seed matures within the radiational currents until it returns to its originator. Thus, nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is overlooked. Wrong actions create disturbances in the spiritual environment, discordant waves that inevitably return as hardship, confusion, or inner suffering. Right actions, however, send out bright currents that return as growth, opportunities, protection, and inner peace. The Grail Message points out that this law is not a punishment or reward, but simply automatic balancing, just as a stone thrown upward must fall according to gravity. In this light, right and wrong are not moral opinions but laws of sowing and harvesting. To act wrongly is to plant seeds whose fruits one will not desire. To act rightly is to sow what brings enrichment, clarity, and peace. This understanding frees humanity from superstition and reveals that every individual shapes their own future. Chapter 8. Purity of intention is the basis of upright action. Why outward action alone is insufficient. How impure motives corrupt seemingly right deeds. One of the most important corrections the Grail Message brings is the clarification that morality is not determined merely by outward appearance, but by the inner volition, the origin of the action. A deed may appear noble and generous, yet if it springs from vanity, selfishness, or the desire for recognition, it carries dark radiations. Pure intention is light. Impure intention is shadow. Two people may perform the same outward act, for example, giving help to someone in need, yet spiritually, the two actions can be worlds apart. The first may uplift, the second may burden. Why? Because intention shapes the radiational essence of every deed. A person who acts from genuine compassion aligns with the laws and strengthens the good. But one who acts from pride or guilt mixes distortions into the radiational field, and such distortions cannot bring blessing, even if the act appears charitable. Thus, true morality requires that the inner state be examined with honesty. Humanity must learn again that right and wrong begin within, and that the purity of the intention determines the spiritual value of every action. Chapter 9. The Role of Intellect, Emotion, and Spirit in Moral Discernment. When intellect dominates, moral distortion. When emotion dominates, moral confusion. When spirit guides, true recognition. The human being is not guided by one force, but by three: the intellect, the emotions, and the spirit. Each plays a role in daily decision-making, but they are not equal in authority. The intellect sees only logic and material advantage. The emotions see only personal feelings and impulses. Only the spirit sees truth. When intellect dominates, morality becomes legalistic, overcomplicated, or lifeless, turning right and wrong into mere rules rather than living recognition. When emotion dominates, people are led by sympathy, anger, or personal attachment, making morally inconsistent choices. Both forces can be manipulated and are easily misled. But when the spirit guides, a quiet, clear knowing arises, an intuitive recognition of what aligns with light. This inner voice does not shout, argue, or push, it illumines. It reveals the spiritual consequence of an action before it is taken. It strengthens what is noble and warns against what is harmful. The Grail Message teaches that morality becomes firm and unmistakable only when the spirit awakens and takes its rightful leadership within the human being. Then intellect and emotion fall into their proper roles as servants, not masters, of moral discernment. Chapter 10. Recognition of universal law as the ultimate standard. Why divine law, not societal convention, defines right and wrong. Human morality varies, but universal law does not. Divine law, unbreakable, self-acting, perfect, stands above human opinion, culture, religious tradition, and intellectual philosophy. It is this law that determines right and wrong in all realms. Whenever humanity drifts from this law, confusion arises. What one generation praises, the next condemns. What one culture celebrates, another rejects. People are lost in a maze of shifting opinions. Only the recognition of the universal spiritual laws restores clarity. The laws, reciprocal action, attraction of homogeneous species, spiritual gravity, and others, form the eternal measure against which every human deed is weighed. Nothing escapes them, and nothing contradicts them. With these laws, morality is no longer subjective. It becomes objective truth, measurable by radiational harmony. Right is what aligns with the law. Wrong is what opposes it. The Grail Message calls humanity to return to this universal recognition, for only then can the human spirit regain its certainty, its responsibility, and its rightful path upward again. Part 3. Human failings in recognizing right and wrong. Obstacles that blind the human spirit. Humanity does not primarily fail in doing what is right because the right path is hidden. It fails because its capacity to recognize what is right has been dulled, buried, and distorted. The Grail Message teaches that the human spirit once possessed an unclouded ability to feel what is right, but over centuries, this living capacity has been overlaid by intellect worship, social pressure, fear, ego, and habit. This part exposes these obstacles, not to condemn, but to liberate. For only what is unveiled can be overcome. Chapter 11. The Tyranny of Cultural and Social Opinion. How conformity suppresses independent recognition. Human beings rarely act from true inner conviction. Most act from what people will say, what society approves, what trends demand, or what tradition expects. This subtle tyranny forces people into moral blindness. Cultural opinion changes from age to age, country to country, and even generation to generation, yet humanity foolishly treats it as moral law. What was acceptable yesterday becomes forbidden today, what is mocked today may be praised tomorrow. Such instability proves that social opinion cannot define right or wrong, because truth is unchangeable. The Grail Message teaches that right and wrong arise from the laws embedded in creation, not from the shifting values of society. When one conforms blindly, they silence their inner perception. Many commit wrong simply because everyone does it, or because resisting society feels too costly. Others fear being excluded, disliked, or accused of being strange. But spiritual law is not concerned with popularity, it concerns rightness, nothing more. True morality demands courage, the courage to stand alone if needed. The human spirit must reclaim its independence from the noisy voices of the crowd. Chapter 12. Pride, Ego, and the Justification of Wrong. Rationalizing harmful acts as acceptable. The greatest obstacle to moral clarity is not ignorance but ego. Pride refuses correction, resists admitting wrong, and seeks to appear flawless in its own eyes. Instead of submitting to truth, it twists truth to protect itself. This creates a dangerous inner blindness. People justify harmful actions by giving them new names. I wasn't cruel, I was being firm. I didn't lie, I only avoided unnecessary details. I didn't harm, they misunderstood. With such self-excuses, wrong becomes normalized. The Grail Message explains that pride builds a wall around the spirit, preventing the light from penetrating. That is why the proud cannot recognize right and wrong correctly, they live within their own illusion. Ego always seeks dominance, comfort, and superiority. True moral recognition demands humility, the willingness to say, I was wrong, I must change. Only the humble can perceive truth, because humility opens the spirit to the radiations of light, which reveal reality as it is. Chapter 13. Fear and Self-Preservation Distorting Morality. When survival instinct overrides lawfulness. Fear is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior, and it often drives people to do wrong while believing they have no choice. Fear of losing money. Fear of losing status. Fear of hardship. Fear of consequences. Fear of judgment. Under fear, humans prioritize self-preservation over lawfulness and justify it as necessary. But no fear can excuse wrongdoing, for spiritual law responds only to the deed and the intention behind it, never to excuses. The Grail Message clarifies that fear is a product of spiritual weakness. A strong spirit trusts the working of the laws and stands firm. A weak spirit acts in desperation, even against its own better knowledge. Whenever fear governs decision-making, the ability to recognize right and wrong becomes clouded. A calm, clear inner state is necessary for recognition. Therefore, the human being must cultivate courage, not recklessness, but the quiet courage that comes from knowing that truth alone protects. Chapter 14. Habit, Ignorance, and the Repetition of Wrong. The destructive power of unexamined routines. Much wrongdoing is not intentional, it is habitual. People repeat actions simply because that is how it has always been done. This mechanical existence suffocates recognition. Habit dulls the inner life and reduces morality to routine. Ignorance also plays a role. Many do wrong unconsciously because they have never questioned their behavior or examined its consequences. But ignorance does not remove the effects of wrong actions, the laws respond regardless of awareness. The Grail Message warns that humanity has become spiritually lazy. Instead of actively observing, recognizing, and choosing, people drift through life on autopilot. They react rather than act. They follow convenience rather than lawfulness. True moral awakening requires conscious attention, seeing each moment as an opportunity to choose what is right, rather than relying on old patterns. Chapter 15. Intellectualization and Moral Rationalization. Using reasoning to justify acts that violate law. The greatest distortion in modern times comes from the worship of the intellect. The intellect is incapable of perceiving moral truth, it operates only within logic, calculation, and utility. Yet humanity has entrusted it with decisions of conscience. Through intellectualization, even clearly wrong actions can be made to appear reasonable. The intellect can justify cruelty as efficiency, deceit as strategy, selfishness as self-care, and immorality as necessary complexity. Such reasoning deadens the intuitive sense of right and wrong. The Grail Message explains that the intellect is a tool, not a guide. It belongs to the earthly environment and cannot reach into the higher planes where truth is anchored. When it dominates, the spirit's voice is silenced. Moral clarity is regained only when the intellect is subordinated to the intuition, when the human spirit, not the brain, becomes the master once again. Part 4. How Right and Wrong Manifest in Daily Life. Practical Observation of Law and Deviation. Chapter 16. Moral Choices in Relationships. Love, Loyalty, and Upright Interaction, Distinguishing Self-Interest from Moral Rightness. Human relationships are the most immediate arena in which right and wrong become visible. They reveal, almost without disguise, the true state of a person's inner life. In relationships, the human spirit stands exposed, its intentions, motives, desires, and weaknesses come forth naturally, without the intellect's ability to hide behind constructed arguments. The Grail Message clarifies that right action in relationships flows from purity, truthfulness, and respect for the other person's spiritual core. Wrong arises whenever self-interest, possessiveness, vanity, or fear dictates behavior. Every wrong in human interaction begins with a simple deviation from the natural radiational harmony that holds creation together. True love, for instance, is not emotional dependency, nor is it blind tolerance of harmful behavior. Love is a willingness to uplift, a force that strengthens what is good in another and supports their journey toward maturity. Emotional attachment, however, often disguises itself as love yet brings pain, oppression, jealousy, and suffocation. Many have mistaken emotional desire as moral justification for their actions, unaware that such desire is rooted in self rather than truth. Loyalty, too, must be rooted in what is right, not in sentiment. To support a friend or relative in wrongdoing is not loyalty but participation in spiritual deviation. True loyalty never contradicts the laws of creation. When a person is guided by intuition, calm, clear, elevated, and not by emotion or self-preserving instinct, they naturally sense when they have stepped into wrongness. A slight disturbance arises within, a loss of inner clarity. That is the spirit's warning signal. Thus the moral path in relationships is simple. Where upliftment, honesty, and clarity reign, right prevails. Where self-promotion, manipulation, or emotional dominance appear, wrong begins. Chapter 17, Ethics in Work, Wealth, and Responsibility. Aligning professional action with law, consequences of corruption, fraud, and exploitation. Work is not merely a means of survival. It is a field of spiritual cultivation. Through work, the spirit learns responsibility, diligence, orderliness, and the joy of service. Every task, simple or complex, connects the human spirit to the great weaving of creation when performed with sincerity. Right action in work therefore requires honesty in dealing and reporting, fairness in exchange, respect for those affected by one's actions, sincerity in fulfilling entrusted duties. Wrong enters the moment a person attempts to take more than they have earned, deceive another, or exploit someone's vulnerability. Fraud, bribery, and corruption are not merely social evils, they are radiational distortions that disrupt the natural harmony of giving and receiving. They set into motion reciprocal effects that eventually return to the doer in ways they seldom expect. Exploitation of workers, customers, or colleagues darkens the spiritual environment because it contradicts the natural law of mutual upward striving. One cannot benefit from another's downfall without binding oneself to future suffering. The Grail Message repeatedly emphasizes that no gain built on wrong can endure, for spiritual law quietly and irresistibly dissolves all unjust advantage. Wealth attained through exploitation becomes a burden rather than a blessing. Positions gained through deceit eventually collapse. The human spirit blossoms in work done uprightly, but it contracts, shrivels, and burdens itself when it uses work to violate the sacred balance of justice built into creation. Chapter 18, Right and Wrong in Speech and Thought. The radiational effect of words and inner dialogue, lies, gossip, and harmful intent as destructive forces. Words are not harmless vibrations. They are living forms, carrying radiations that either uplift or injure. Humanity has underestimated the profound spiritual effect of speech. Idle talk, gossip, slander, exaggeration, and deceit create actual forms in the subtle planes, forms that return to their originator with intensified force. The Grail Message explains that every word carries the imprint of the speaker's inner state. A kind word radiates clarity and warmth. A bitter word radiates sharpness and cold. Words spoken in truth nourish. Words spoken in malice wound. Thoughts, too, possess formative power. Wrong thinking, suspicion, hatred, envy, arrogance, pollutes the inner environment and attracts corresponding dark influences. Right thinking, gratitude, clarity, goodwill, creates harmony and strengthens intuition. The greatest dangers in speech and thought are lies, which distort reality and pull the soul away from truth. Gossip, which poisons relationships and damages unseen realms. Complaints and negative speech, which attract further darkness. Hidden inner hostility, which silently shapes future wrongdoing. Right speech is founded on clarity, simplicity, respect, and truthfulness. It never manipulates, never inflates, never diminishes. The spiritually mature person speaks only when inner recognition compels it, not from emotional impulse. When speech and thought align with truth, the human spirit becomes a blessing to its surroundings. When they depart from lawfulness, destruction follows. Chapter 19, The Subtle Wrong, Inaction and Neglect. Failing to act when lawfulness demands intervention. Many people believe they are innocent simply because they did not actively commit harm. Yet creation does not measure morality by action alone, it measures by responsibility. Wrong can also arise in the subtle form of inaction, when a person knows what is right but refuses to act because of fear, laziness, or convenience. Neglect is one of the least recognized yet most pervasive wrongs in human life. It manifests when parents neglect their duty of guidance, when leaders neglect their responsibility to protect, when individuals neglect their inner voice urging them toward a corrective action. The Grail Message teaches that every person is responsible for the circle of influence entrusted to them. If a person witnesses wrongdoing, sees someone suffering, or identifies a harmful pattern, and chooses silence, then they partake in the consequences of that wrong. Creation counts such passivity as deviation from law. Inaction becomes wrong when one fails to defend truth when it is attacked. One refuses to correct oneself when recognition dawns. One chooses comfort over duty. One withdraws from a task given by the inner prompting of intuition. Right action requires courage, clarity, and willingness to confront even discomfort. Every moment in which the spirit fails to participate in the upward striving of creation becomes a missed opportunity that later returns as stagnation or suffering. Chapter 20. Everyday acts as training in recognition. Small choices is the foundation of moral maturity. Moral greatness does not begin with grand decisions, it begins with the smallest, most ordinary choices of daily life. These choices, how one treats a stranger, how one speaks when irritated, how one handles money, how one reacts to provocation, are the training grounds of the spirit. The Grail Message reveals that right and wrong are woven into every moment, not only into major actions. Each thought, word, and deed affirms or contradicts spiritual law. The human being grows through thousands of tiny recognitions, adjustments, and corrections. Examples of everyday moral training. Choosing honesty in situations where deceit seems easier. Speaking kindly even when annoyed. Returning what does not belong to you. Resisting gossip when others indulge in it. Being punctual, respectful, orderly, and responsible. Acting with gratitude for small blessings. Remaining truthful even when no one is watching. Each of these seemingly insignificant acts strengthens the spirit, sharpens the intuition, and clarifies the inner compass. Wrong, likewise, accumulates in small ways, through laziness, selfishness, carelessness, and disregard for others. The human spirit becomes morally upright not through knowledge or theory, but through lived experience. Each day is a classroom. Each interaction is a lesson. Each choice is a step toward either harmony or deviation. Right and wrong are not mysteries hidden in sacred texts, they are active forces experienced in the rhythm of daily life. The awakened human being sees, recognizes, and responds. Part 5. Liberation through clarity and uprightness. How to rise above confusion and error. Chapter 21. Honest self-examination is the starting point. Observing one's own patterns without excuse. Every true ascent in moral recognition begins with a turning inward, an unembellished, unvarnished meeting with oneself. This form of self-examination is not the painful self-accusation common in religious circles, nor the empty self-analysis of psychology. It is a quiet, sober acknowledgement of one's motives, tendencies, weaknesses, and habitual patterns. Without this moment of self-honesty, nothing else is possible. The Grail Message explains that enlightenment begins with recognition. One cannot correct what one refuses to see. Wrong action persists because human beings wrap themselves in excuses, intentions, comparisons, and emotional justifications. They judge their actions not by law, but by convenience and comfort. This clouds recognition and makes moral confusion seem normal. To examine oneself rightly is to stand still internally and allow the light of truth to illuminate one's real inner state. This requires humility, a willingness to see oneself not as one wishes to be, but as one is. This is not humiliation, it is liberation. Self-honesty opens the door to transformation because it aligns the human spirit with truth. Once truth is acknowledged within, the path forward becomes unmistakably clear. One must change. Thus, self-examination is not merely the beginning, it is the foundation upon which all moral growth stands. Chapter 22. Aligning intention with law. The centrality of purity of motive. Human beings often attempt to measure morality by outward appearances, actions, gestures, compliance with rules. But the Grail Message teaches that intention precedes action, and intention determines the radiational quality, the spiritual weight, of every deed. A deed outwardly good can be inwardly corrupted by selfish motives, pride, desire for recognition, fear, or hypocrisy. In the same way, a simple act performed with sincerity and purity can radiate great strength and blessing. Therefore, to understand right and wrong, one must first examine the soil from which actions grow, the motive. Purity of intention means wanting what aligns with spiritual law, not what pleases one's ego or satisfies emotional desires. It means desiring truth, harmony, and the good of all involved. This requires inner clarity, because often humans believe their motives are good simply because they feel pleasant or noble. Yet emotional warmth is not purity, and enthusiasm is not righteousness. To align intention with law, one must cultivate a receptive spirit, one ready to listen inwardly to the quiet guidance of intuition. This intuitive knowing is never self-serving or manipulative. It is simple, clear, and calm. When intention is purified, action naturally follows the correct course. Moral effort becomes effortless because the spirit is aligned with truth. Thus, intention becomes the compass pointing steadily toward what is right. Chapter 23. Courage to act rightly despite opposition. When spiritual recognition conflicts with social pressure. Recognizing what is right is one step, acting on it is another. Many people know inwardly what they should do, yet they hesitate. They fear rejection, judgment, conflict, or loss. They cling to security, convenience, or reputation. But morality without courage is merely knowledge without power. Throughout history, and in daily life, humans face countless moments where doing what is right conflicts with societal expectations, family demands, cultural norms, or personal comfort. These moments reveal the true strength of the spirit. The Grail Message emphasizes that courage is a spiritual virtue, a radiational force that awakens higher clarity and strengthens inner conviction. Acting rightly requires standing on spiritual law even when surrounded by misunderstanding. It requires being honest when others value flattery, being fair when others promote favoritism, being truthful when lies appear easier, and being upright when compromise would bring immediate advantage. Courage to do right is not defiant stubbornness. It is the quiet, firm resolve that arises from inner certainty. When you know what the light demands, hesitation becomes harmful. In fact, moral cowardice is a subtle form of wrong, because knowing the right and refusing it strengthens the darkness within. Each courageous act strengthens the inner being, expands recognition, and helps the spirit ascend. In this way, courage is not merely a virtue, it is a ladder to freedom. Chapter 24. Healing past errors through recognition and correction. Correcting misdeeds restores radiational harmony. Every human being has erred, sometimes deeply. But the Grail Message makes clear that errors are not the end, they are opportunities for learning, growth, and rectification. No error can be undone by regret, self-condemnation, or denial. Only recognition and correction restore harmony. Recognition means seeing the wrong clearly, without minimizing, excusing, or blaming others. Correction means taking whatever steps are possible to repair the damage, whether through apology, restitution, change behavior, or sincere inner resolution. This act of correction has a radiational effect. Wrong actions create disturbances, disharmonies, that return to the doer through the law of reciprocal action. But when recognition is followed by sincere adjustment, the returning effects meet a changed inner condition. This mitigates painful consequences and transforms returning seeds into lessons rather than punishments. Correcting an error also frees the spirit from inner burden. What was heavy becomes light. What was dark becomes clarified. The chains of guilt dissolve because the spirit has aligned itself once more with the light. Correction is, therefore, not merely ethical, it is healing. To neglect correction is to allow wrong seeds to continue bearing fruit. To embrace it is to step into liberation. Chapter 25. Building moral resilience and uprightness. Consistent practice strengthens recognition and conscience. Right living is not a single act but a continual process. Moral clarity must be strengthened like a muscle, through repeated choices made in alignment with spiritual law. This is what builds resilience, the ability to remain upright even when pressures, temptations, or difficult circumstances arise. Resilience grows through daily reflection on one's inner state, mindful awareness of motives and impulses, consistent correction of small deviations, courageous action when clarity demands it, watching over thoughts and words to avoid subtle wrongs, upright responsibility in relationships and duties. With consistency, the conscience becomes sharper, not in a moralistic or punitive sense, but as a clear inner instrument that immediately signals when a thought, intention, or action deviates from truth. This sensitivity is a gift, a shield, and a guide. The Grail Message explains that the human spirit matures through experience, recognition, and adjustment. As one practices uprightness, the radiations of the spirit brighten, and the inner guidance becomes stronger. Wrong becomes immediately repulsive, right becomes naturally attractive. The struggle gradually transforms into certainty. Moral resilience is not perfection. It is faithfulness, the willingness to return again and again to what is right, until uprightness becomes one's natural state. Part 6. Practical Exercises for Daily Moral Clarity. Tools for Alignment and Inner Strength. Chapter 26. Daily Reflection on Actions and Intentions. Daily reflection is one of the simplest and most powerful tools for moral clarity. It is not self-judgment, nor emotional lamentation, nor anxious introspection. It is the calm, honest observation of one's inner life in the light of truth. Every human being carries within a capacity to perceive when something is right or wrong. Yet this recognition is frequently drowned in activity, noise, and unexamined habits. A daily practice of reflection gently draws the inner life back into order. Each evening, one can recall the day's decisions, not to condemn oneself, but to see. This seeing begins to separate what was guided by intuition from what was ruled by impulse, convenience, or ego. In reflection, one notices patterns. When impatience rises. When fear dictates choices. When pride colors speech. When kindness flows naturally. Over time, this observation strengthens inner honesty, which is the foundation of all moral progress. For the spirit awakens not through pressure but through clarity. By calmly assessing one's intentions, the inner compass grows increasingly sensitive. In this way, daily reflection becomes a cleansing stream that washes away the dust of unawareness, making one increasingly receptive to the quiet voice of intuition, the true guide to what is right and what is wrong. Chapter 27. Radiational Alignment Practices for Moral Sensitivity. Right and wrong are not human inventions, they express themselves through spiritual laws woven into creation. These laws radiate constantly, shaping harmony where actions align with them and producing disturbance when actions deviate. To discern moral correctness, one must gradually tune oneself to these radiations. Radiational alignment begins with stillness. Moments of calm help the spirit rise above the agitation of intellect and emotion. In such moments, impressions become clearer, and responses more truthful. Practices may include quiet sitting for a few minutes each morning, conscious breathing to release tension, pausing before decisions to sense inner reactions, retreating briefly from noise or heated discussions. These simple acts strengthen the connection between the spirit and the surrounding radiations. The more a person lives in inner order, the more strongly they perceive disharmony when something is morally wrong, much like noticing discord in music. Radiational alignment also involves purity. When motives are selfish, resentful, or manipulative, the spirit's perception becomes clouded. But when the inner striving is sincere, noble, and upright, recognition becomes easier, and truth becomes clearer. Thus, radiational alignment is not a mystical technique. It is the disciplined cultivation of inner order, calmness, sincerity, and attentiveness. This sharpens the ability to feel what is right long before the intellect begins to reason about it. Chapter 28. Exercises for Strengthening Intuition and Recognition. Intuition is the spirit's perception, immediate, clear, and unforced. It does not argue, it simply knows. The task of the human being is not to manufacture intuition but to remove the obstructions that prevent its recognition. Exercises for strengthening intuition include 1. Practicing truthfulness in small things. When one refuses even harmless lies, the inner atmosphere becomes clearer. Truthfulness sharpens perception. 2. Paying attention to first impressions. Often, the first quiet reaction to a situation, person, or idea carries the truth. The second reaction is usually the intellect interfering. 3. Listening before responding. Rushing in speech closes the pathway of intuition. Silence opens it. 4. Observing inner reactions to choices. Whenever presented with two options, observe which one brings inner calm and which brings subtle tension or heaviness. 5. Avoiding emotional overreactions. Emotion is loud, intuition is quiet. Reducing emotional impulsiveness makes room for intuitive clarity. These simple disciplines gradually open the door of recognition. The spirit becomes more aware of the nature of circumstances, the intentions of others, and the moral quality of one's own actions. Through practice, moral sensitivity awakens, leading to greater uprightness and certainty in daily conduct. Chapter 29. Weekly Questions for Upright Self-Evaluation. Weekly evaluation allows a person to track their moral growth over time. Unlike daily reflection, which focuses on small moments, weekly questions address broader patterns. Some examples include: did I act from integrity or convenience this week? Which actions brought inner peace, and which ones disturbed it? Did fear influence any of my decisions? Where did pride, irritation, or selfishness appear? Was I attentive to the needs of others? Did I speak truthfully and kindly? Did I avoid harm where I should have intervened? Did I follow the quiet prompting of intuition? These questions help uncover hidden tendencies. They expose the subtle roots of wrong actions before they grow into major errors. They also strengthen the will to change, because awareness naturally calls for transformation. Weekly evaluation is not meant to produce guilt. It is meant to awaken clarity, responsibility, and the desire to align with lawfulness. Over time, this practice develops inner uprightness, resistance to temptation, and a growing sensitivity to what is right and what is wrong. Chapter 30. Creating a lifelong rhythm of lawful action. Moral clarity is not a momentary achievement but a lifelong rhythm. It develops through repeated choices that align with spiritual law. This rhythm becomes a shield, a compass, and a source of inner strength. To establish this rhythm, a person cultivates consistency, acting rightly even when it is inconvenient or unseen. Awareness, remaining attentive to inner reactions, not drifting into mechanical habits. Correction, readily admitting mistakes and adjusting one's course. Sincerity, allowing purity of intention to determine every decision. Courage, standing for what is right despite social pressure. When these qualities are woven into daily life, the human spirit gradually becomes firm, clear, and luminous. Wrongdoing becomes naturally repulsive, while right action becomes a source of joy and inner expansion. A lifelong rhythm of lawful action means living in continuous harmony with the spiritual laws that govern creation. It means moving through life with clarity, strength, and increasing freedom. It leads to moral maturity, the state where one's entire being resonates with what is right. This is the path to true dignity and inner peace, and it is available to every human being who sincerely strives. Conclusion. The human being who lives rightly is a beacon of light. Freedom through moral recognition. Standing upright before God without fear or confusion. Humanity has long wandered in a fog of shifting opinions, unstable moral codes, and voices that contradict one another. Every culture, religion, and social movement has attempted to define what is right and what is wrong, yet very few have come close to the clarity offered by the immutable laws of creation. The Grail Message reveals what humanity has forgotten. Right and wrong are not human inventions. They are realities woven into the radiational fabric of creation itself. The human being who grasps this does not merely learn morality, he awakens to it. Recognition becomes natural, intuitive, and firmly anchored in the living laws. Such a person becomes an instrument of light, not through preaching or superiority, but through the quiet, steady example of lawful action. To live rightly is to stand in harmony with the will of God as it manifests in creation. This brings an inner freedom that no human opinion can give. It removes fear, for one's footing no longer rests on the unstable ground of social judgment. It dispels confusion, for truth becomes the measure of all decisions. The upright human being does not tremble before life. He walks with clarity, strength, and quiet joy. This book has served as a lantern for those earnestly seeking, a call to true recognition, a correction for those misled by human doctrine, and an invitation to rise above moral chaos. What remains is the simplest yet most demanding task: to live what has been recognized. For recognition without action is still spiritual sleep. The human being who joins recognition with action becomes a beacon, lighting the path for others, contributing to the healing of humanity, and preparing for the great purification that is already shaping the new era. He stands upright before God, not by belonging to a group, not by repeating doctrines, but by aligning his thoughts, words, and deeds with the eternal laws of creation. Such a life is the greatest testimony of truth. Epilogue. The coming purification. A world clarified through law and recognition. Only those who see and do right will shine in the new age. Humanity stands at the threshold of great transformation. The confusion that has darkened human morality cannot continue. The laws of creation, long ignored and violated, now move with heightened force to purify, separate, and renew. This is the time spoken of by sages, prophets, and bearers of truth in all ages, a time when everything hidden will be exposed, and every human being will confront the consequences of their choices. In this coming purification, right and wrong will no longer be matters of debate. They will appear with absolute clarity because the radiations of light increase, dissolving shadows that once allowed falsehood to hide. Those who have built their lives on deceit, exploitation, manipulation, or complacency will find no ground left to stand on. Their structures will collapse, not as punishment, but as the natural outworking of the laws they resisted. Yet for those who seek truth, who strive daily to act rightly, the purification is not a threat, it is a liberation. They will rise, strengthened, clarified, and freed from the weight of a morally distorted world. The new era demands human beings who are inwardly upright, spiritually alert, and anchored in truth. No outer label, religious, moral, or philosophical, will matter. Only recognition and deed will count. Those who see clearly and live accordingly will shine with new radiance, forming the foundation of the humanity that will thrive in the coming order. This is not a promise of ease, but of rightness. It is a call to courage, awakening, and purification of the self. The future belongs to those who choose the light, who live truth, not merely admire it. Appendix: Practices for recognizing and living right. Meditations, exercises, and daily tools for moral clarity. The following practices are designed to help the earnest seeker strengthen moral recognition, align more deeply with the laws of creation, and cultivate uprightness of thought, speech, and action. Each is written to harmonize with the Grail-inspired rhythm of enlightenment and correction. 1. Meditations for moral awareness. Meditation. The light of recognition. Sit in silence. Imagine the radiations of light gently illuminating your inner being. Ask inwardly, what within me stands in harmony with the light, and what stands against it? Do not judge, simply observe. Recognition is the beginning of transformation. Meditation. The mirror of deeds. Bring to mind your actions from the day. Observe them as though you were watching another person. Which actions harmonized with truth? Which felt heavy, unnatural, or burdening? This meditation strengthens objectivity and inner honesty. 2. Exercises for clarifying intentions and motives. Exercise. The motive test. Before any action, large or small, ask, why am I doing this? Then ask again, what lies beneath that? The second question often exposes hidden vanity, fear, pride, or self-interest. Exercise. Purity reset. Once a week, choose one area of your life, speech, relationships, work, finances, and dedicate the entire day to acting with absolute purity of intention. This reveals how much inner discipline is still needed and strengthens moral endurance. 3. Daily practices for upright thought, speech, and action. Morning practice. State inwardly, today, I choose what is right, regardless of convenience, opinion, or fear. Set your alignment for the day. Midday practice. Pause briefly. Ask yourself, am I acting in harmony with the laws of creation at this moment? If not, adjust immediately. Night practice. Reflect on one action you are proud of and one you must correct. This gentle rhythm builds moral strength over time. 4. Radiational alignment and reflection prayers. These are not requests for favors but attunements to the laws. Prayer of alignment. May my thoughts, words, and deeds align with the will of the Creator as it manifests through His laws. Prayer of correction. I recognize where I have erred. I choose to correct my path and act in accordance with truth. Prayer of courage. Grant me the strength to act rightly even when it demands sacrifice. These prayers lift the spirit upward and sharpen moral sensitivity. 5. Weekly journaling for moral growth. At the end of each week, write responses to these questions. Where did I act in clarity? Where did I follow comfort instead of truth? Which repeated errors appeared again, and why? What inner prompting did I ignore? What act of courage did I take, or avoid? Over time, Patterns emerge, enabling deep self-purification.